Let's get started. Welcome to the midterm presentations. I'll be your host, Dave. Got the standard set of forms, but we got a new form today. This is the evaluation form, and want everybody to fill it out. Did you get one? Yeah. Okay. So for these presentations, you're going to evaluate other teams. And that way you get a lot more feedback than just from me. So this is going to be a help for every team to see what other people, how other people judge your project. And you'll be getting these back probably this weekend or Monday after I collate all the scores and slice it up and stuff like that. So it should be helpful for you. So one way to think about the midterm presentations is to think about it as practice for your final presentation, because your final presentation is going to be worth twice as much as this. So take those comments and suggestions to heart when you get them. Okay. So you're obviously not going to score your own presentation. So look it up and see where it is in here, and just put an X through that empty box there, so so you won't mistakenly get out of synchronous. Okay. And I want everybody to look at their writing utensil. If it's a pencil, that's no good. If it's ink, it's good. If it bleeds through to the other side, it's no good. So if you need a new writing instrument, I've got tons of pens. So just let me know. Okay? Next Thursday at this time, rain or shine, we're going to have our second field trip to the Magical Bridge Playground. There's Olenka, who will be our host next week. So pray for no rain. But it's even fun just to be there and see what's going on and have Olenka tell us about the facility, and hopefully we'll be able to try out some of the equipment. Okay, next Tuesday we're going to have Peter Axelson. He's a Stanford grad in mechanical engineering. I've known him for like 38 years. So, and he's been presenting in this class for at least 10 or 11 years. And he's done a lot of stuff in that intervening time that he's going to tell you about. So it's going to be a great presentation because we've seen it before. Midterm reports are going to be due in next week. I have all these links on for the assignment and the section titles and stuff like that. I'll send them to you tomorrow. And I have tips for writing the reports and how I want each section to look. So that ought to help you a lot. If you have sketches, I encourage you to scan them rather than take a picture of them and then clean them up afterwards. There's a copier scanner across from my office, and you're welcome to come by and I'll show you how to make that scan. And so another big thing about images in your report is to have the proper caption for it. And I think there's some software that doesn't really allow you to do a great caption, but there's a whole website about adding captions that I'll refer you to. And of course you want to add your references in the back, and if you're referencing a web page, please put the title of the web page and then the link next to it. If you just have links, I don't know what it is. So all journals require a title and the link. So please do that. Okay, so today we're going to have this will be the order of presentation today. You guys can stand over here. I'm going to have the microphone on this device, and we'll all be out here. And again, it's going to be 7 minutes. We'll see how well you do in telling your entire story. and making it concise and staying within that 7 minutes. And this is the presenter that you'll be using to advance the slides. All you got to worry about is the right button, number 2 button, to go forward. And I'll be handling the mouse, so if there's a link that needs to be clicked on, I'll do it from there. And I'll be going through all the different slides for each team. So just give me a minute, and maybe the first team can come up and get set while I do some last minute things. Okay, let's have the Mean Machine up here. All right. Is that for them or for me? Oh, okay. I just want to know. Okay. That's for you.
Yeah. Keep anything down. I have some slides right here, some shit I want to say. You can just I'm just peeked down when Barbara's talking. Oh, come on now.
I'll get my timer out too. So we're getting started there.
Space time.
Close that and bring up your slides.
How do we click the link? Okay. So is he standing up there? Oh yeah, there's a track right there. Yeah. Because we're just using his voice. It's just gonna be his voice, right?
Okay, go. I'm Ryan.
I'm Cam.
And you'll hear from Jack in a little bit, but we're Team Mean Machine.
Hi everyone, my name is Jack Barber. The two people actually standing in front of you right now are my teammates, Cam Scarlett and Ryan Kaczynski.
Can we cover that slide? Just have his voice playing.
Help design a feasible cup holder for Danny's wheelchair. But maybe before we get into our experiences with Danny and Stanford, I'll just tell you a little bit about how we got there. As is the case with almost any engineering project that we're going to encounter in class or in real life, things change when we have to adapt. For the first 3.5 weeks of the quarter, my group and I were working with Fernanda on the chart for her wheelchair. Unfortunately, she fell ill a few weeks back, so 2 weeks ago, my group and I were lucky enough to reassign to work with her. Danny, being the popular guy that we know he all is, already had 2 groups working with him, one on a tray table and one on a grabber tool. So we needed to find the need that neither of those 2 groups addressed, and also a design solution that didn't get in the way of any of the other 2 group designs for Danny. Pretty quickly, actually, when speaking with him, Danny suggested that we implement a cup holder to his chair, which we thought was really a great idea because thinking about the other group design solution, the tray table and the grabber tool, a cup could easily slip off of the tray table, and once it was on the floor, it would be definitely very difficult to pick up with the grabber tool, just given its size and its shape. So once my group and Danny were locked in on the cup holder idea, we had to take some key considerations into account. First and foremost, our design had to be conscientious of Danny's reduced arm range of motion, his limited hand dexterity, and his visual impairment, because at the end of the day, we're just trying to make his life easier, not any harder. By investigating these needs, first through talking with Danny and Stanford, we believe now that we're able to design him a sturdy, supportable, and detachable cup holder that will easily help his drinking needs. Not surprisingly, this is a need that has existed before, so there are some solutions out there on the market. Today, we're going to just quickly glance over the top 4 most popular ones on the market. As we can see, product 1 is kind of made of this canvas, rain-resistant like material, but it's really not sturdy enough for larger cups or cups that are filled to the brim. And then looking at products 2 and 3, you can see that they're more of a plastic mold, but they're non-adjustable and they're much more difficult to attach and detach with a screw, so we think our solution could be a lot easier for Danny and Stanford to use together. Product 4 is kind of funky looking. It has this tubular snake-like attachment to the cup holder. With Danny always on the move that he is, this design concept seems like it would just get in the way all too often and really become more of an annoyance than anything else.
So from here, we decided to shift our focus more on, spending some time with Danny and really his wheelchair. And we went over to his house and had dinner with them, and we got the dimensions of his wheelchair along with his range of motion, measured his range of motion, just because we wanted to make sure the product is most effective and useful for Danny. This moved us into our ideation phase, and we started brainstorming design concepts. And in this phase, we all just sat down and really wanted to get as many ideas down on paper as we could. So then that allowed us the freedom to decipher between which aspects of each product we liked and what we wanted to throw away. But the biggest thing is we just wanted to get as many ideas down on paper and just talk about what things that we thought could be useful. Here are some of our prototypes, just first sketches of them. And we were deciding between ways that we wanted to attach it to his wheelchair and different materials we were going to use, and whether or not we wanted to make it how adjustable we wanted to make it. And we have some plastic adjustable strap or Velcro or tie, or if we wanted just a flat cup holder with just the cup to hold it. So just different things, and ended up moving forward from here, taking pieces out. And originally we were just planning on doing our cup holder, but we figured out when hanging out with Danny and talking with the other group that Danny struggles dropping his phone often, and that's another problem that we felt like we could fix with our product. So we decided to create a little slit in our cup holder and give him a place to put his phone while he's moving around without worrying about it falling off his lap or out of his pocket. And then that really gave us the understanding of Danny and his problem, and we decided to move forward to making our final prototype.
Yeah, so this is a sketch of our final prototype. It's made out of wood, and our main reason behind that is we wanted something that was extremely durable, especially because you don't really know how much liquid is going to be inside of the cup that we have. Something that we had to consider is Danny's favorite cup, which has to fit within those dimensions of that circle. So you can see the first 2 pieces, they're going to be similar. They're both going to have the hole for the cup holder as well as the square piece for the phone. And the bottom 2 are going to be just the base for those 2. And an ongoing debate that we've been having in our team is how we're going to connect that little arm to his armrest. And that's going to be through Velcro. We don't know if it's going to be on the top or bottom of his armchair yet. We still have to decide that. But we also have to discuss the feasibility. Me, Jack, and Cam, we don't have too much product realization experience. So wood is actually an easy material to use. During our time at the PRL, we're going to have to be using wood, sandpaper, a variety of drill bits, some wood glue to stick everything together. Like I mentioned, we're going to be using the Velcro, polish to make it look nice, and sealer. We think it's going to be about a moderate to maybe mild difficulty. like I said, we don't have the most experience, but we think we can make something work that Danny's going to be extremely happy with. We haven't taken our lessons in the PRL yet, so I'll keep you updated, Dave updated. In the future of work and potential challenges, like I previously mentioned, we have to measure Danny's cup before we actually make the cuts and everything. That's 7 minutes, but I think what we really want to focus on is how it's going to look, how it's going to feel for him, and if he's going to be happy with it or not. Thank you.
We don't really have time for questions, so we'll have to move on to the next person, which is the Magical Bridge team.
I'll leave it close to you.
Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. So we are the Magical Bridge team. We're working with the Magical Bridge Playground, founded by Alenka, who is our community partner. I'm Vanessa. I'm Chantal.
And I'm Jessica.
So to begin, I want to give you a little background about playgrounds. So this is what most playgrounds look like. We learned from Alenka that in order for a playground to be ADA compliant, all it needs to have is this blue bar and the black platform under it, denoted by the red arrow, to be accessible to wheelchair users. This is supposed to help people who use wheelchairs get onto the platform and then get up the stairs and down the slides and use the playground. However, this isn't a very pleasant or welcoming experience, and even if someone was able to get onto the playground, oftentimes the ground of these playgrounds is made out of shredded rubber or wood, which isn't very easy to wheel on. So, in contrast, this is a Magical Bridge playground. So it's massive. Its large open landscape allows people who use many different types of assistive technology, such as wheelchairs, walkers, or dogs, or any others, walk around and get around the park easily. A lot of the designs in the park were made with a lot of different abilities in mind. The slides are able to be ridden by both adults and children. Some of the rides are wheelchairs can actually directly get onto, as seen on the picture on the right. A lot of the elements in the park also make use of a rotational mechanism based on research that spinning motion can help relax people, improve mental health, and encourage creativity. On the left, this structure is actually a laser musical harp, which creates very soft, soothing, magical sounds when you walk under it. And there's other sound elements in the park as well. And on the right is one of the park's most popular features, which is this modified swing design that's able to sit children and adults. Finally, the Magical Bridge Playground has a community playhouse with a stage on which concerts are often held. Ultimately, playgrounds are a place where a community can come together, and with this in mind, the Magical Bridge Playground has been able to create a place that's inclusive of all abilities, all ages, and where all really feel welcome. But there's still some improvements to be made.
So all throughout the playground, there's this green fence around that doesn't really in line with the whole magical feel sense of the playground. So our task was to create playground equipment that could be engaging and interactive while using the fence. So our question that we focused on throughout the design was how can we modify the design of this large resource to integrate this with park play. And some of the factors that we took in consideration while designing was to have that magical feel of the playground, have something that created some natural sounds, most likely like something with a sensory simulation, and that was visually pleasing and also intriguing, and also was engaging and interactive. And one big factor was also to create a big community by encouraging team play, but also being able to entertain an individual person. And some of our brainstorming ideas were we came across the idea of using wind chimes, since it gave a lot of like natural and soothing sounds. We also try to incorporate a lot of animal themes and sea themes into our equipment ideas. And another thing that really came across was the idea of using spinners that seem to be very engaging and interactive. And then one other design was using a caterpillar wrapped around the fence while using a ring that could go through the caterpillar and the fence as well.
So after coming up with our designs, we decided to take a quantitative approach to rank which one of them we think was best. So as you guys can see, all the criteria that we listed before are on one of the rows, and on the column are the different designs that we were choosing. So the spinner design is the one that ended up having the highest score, but we also had a separate way of ranking our designs, which was basically just by preference. And this process was done by all three of us, but also our community partner, Alenka. And as you guys can see, the caterpillar did win out first. So the key takeaway is that passion matters, and we really wanted to do something that we really felt had a place in the Magical Bridge playground. So this is kind of how we envision our design to look like. It would be a caterpillar intertwined in between the bars of the fence and having several rings along its body. So for the following slides, I want you to pay attention specifically to the ring on the tail, because I'm going to show you the mechanism that we decided to come up with for the rings. So if you guys notice well, for this ring, you have a slit at the top of it that would allow us to address one of the biggest challenges in this design, which is that the bars, while providing a support for the caterpillar, also comes in the way of the ring. So we needed a way to allow the rings to pass through the bars. So the slit is actually our way to do that. The slit is going to allow us to move the ring across the bar, and then we're going to flip the ring 180 degrees so that now the slit is at the bottom, and then we can pass it through the entire bar. So this process, while being slightly more complex, is also more engaging for anyone to try to figure it out. So this is our prototype, and a few next steps that we're looking into is like the choice of materials. Like for instance, we've already discussed about wood, or potentially looking more into metal. And again, just in terms of the sustainability of it, we're going to use a lot of colors to make it visually appealing, and also the ring is going to have several shapes and also be able to make sounds, so that it's more engaging for any of the user. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next. Next we have Abby's assistants. Just one comment. Instead of looking at the screen behind you, look at the screen over there. So. All right, go.
Hi everyone, I'm Anna, this is Ariana, and this is Amanda. And the project that we're presenting today is Grocery Shopping with Abby. So this is Abby, she's also over there. She is an artist and a graphic designer, a psychiatric social worker, and a health enthusiast. But on top of all of these things, she's also mobility impaired, which is why she uses this wheelchair, which is the Wheel Model M, which currently has no built-in storage space. So an issue arises every time she goes shopping or has to carry bulkier items, because it's hard for her to access her backpack, which is behind her, and there's no storage space in front of her, so she can carry her things. So to learn more about this problem, we went grocery shopping with Abby, and we noticed three things. So The first thing is that Abby currently uses reusable shopping bags, and she holds them between her legs. And these bags often fall down, and she has to bend down to put things in them, which is hard on her back. And she also takes Nathan, her service dog, with her when she goes grocery shopping. So the design question we decided to focus on, based on what we saw, was how can we improve the shopping experience for Abby? And to start thinking about this, we interviewed her, and there were 3 main takeaways from the interview. The first is that Abby goes shopping every week because she wants her fruit and vegetables to be as fresh as possible. The second thing is that because she brings Nathan with her and she has to control the wheel with her other hand, she has no free hands to hold shopping bags or anything that she buys. And the last thing is that the wheel is tricky to maneuver through tight spaces. So since Abby has to maneuver through aisles in shops or doorways, our solution is shouldn't obstruct the front or the sides of the wheelchair.
Yeah, so with our interview with Abby, we came up with the following design specifications. Our solution should have as much storage space or more as her existing solution. She should be able to lift it by herself. It should stay secure, so it shouldn't fall down when she's moving around. And most of the time, it should be usable hands-free, so that she can hold on to Nathan and steer the wheelchair. And it's not just Abby who could benefit from this solution. There are 3.6 million wheelchair users around the world and a huge market for electric wheelchairs. Yet somehow for her particular wheelchair, there aren't any bag attachments that we know of to solve this problem. There are a couple existing solutions. So Abby uses these reusable bags, and they're pretty common for everyone else as well. But one major issue with them is that they do tend to tip over rather easily. Another solution is some wheelchairs do have baskets, and some supermarkets have these wheelchairs, but Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, and Sprouts, the ones that Abby usually goes to, they don't have these wheelchairs, and besides, Abby already has her own wheelchair, so there's not much point in getting another one just to go grocery shopping. And we also saw these things that are called wheelchair carry carts, which attach to the back of the wheelchair. But we thought this wasn't the best solution because after talking with Abby, we found that it's kind of tiring for her to be reaching behind her. And since all the carry carts seem to be behind the wheelchair, we thought this wasn't the best idea.
Yeah, so we gave ourselves some time and basing ourselves off of those existing solutions that we had seen and what Abby uses right now, we came up with the sort of brainstormed ideas, and you can see that some of them are based off of the last solution that Amanda talked about, the wheelchair cart. Another is kind of a modification of it, so it's kind of a cart that swings around the side of the wheelchair. Another is more of a self-driving cart that goes with Abby in the grocery shop. And some are completely different, such as a bar that goes above her, so she can hang the bags above her. With this, then we decided before we started building something, we thought, okay, let's look at the things that already exist that we can use so that we don't have to start completely from scratch, that can make our lives easier in designing and making prototypes. And we came across these things. So one is the stackable shopping bags. They're kind of similar to what Abby has right now, but because of their shape, they're more rigid and they stay upright and you can stack them. The second set of things is the hook and grommet, so we thought that might be a way of hooking on the bag so that they are secure, they don't fall, and then she can use her hands for whatever she needs, and they'll stay in place. And then Velcro could be another way of securing things, and that in particular is good because it doesn't interfere with Abby's abilities. We drew better sketches of our top design choices, and the first one is more like a long bag that is designed to fit exactly between Abby's legs and the wheelchair, and this was great. But the problem that we ran into when we started prototyping, which we'll see in the next slide, is that if she fills the whole thing up, then she won't be able to lift it. So then we moved on to the next, which is a set of a more modular design, and it's stackable bags. We went to room 36 and we tried these out. That's the first design, the first long bag we tried out. We went shopping for foam blocks basically, and then we realized, okay, she's not going to be able to lift this whole thing. So we explored the second option, which is a more modular approach, and then we realized we still hadn't found a way to secure the bag in place. So we made these low-fi prototypes of the strap with grommets and rope 36, and then with hooks that worked really well. So we met with Abby on Monday, and we got some feedback back from her, and on Tuesday we went shopping for more materials, better materials, to come up with better medium, higher fidelity prototypes. So that's what we're working on right now.
Next we have the Trail Blazers. Okay, go.
Hey everyone, we're the Trailblazers, and our goal this quarter is to make a tray for Tony. So I'm Annie,
My name is Marissa.
I'm Andrea.
and so we first wanted to start with a kind of a brief overview of what we kind of accomplished thus far. So Tony has a manual wheelchair, and because of his need to use his arms to propel himself, he doesn't really have any ability to carry things. And his lap space is not quite as big as he would like to be able to hold things and balance things on his lap. So we first wanted to meet with him and get a better sense of what he wanted, and then after meeting with him, we brainstormed a couple things, prototyped a few things, and then are now working kind of to decide what the best thing would be.
Yeah, so a little bit more into the problem. So currently where Tony works, sometimes he has to hold a laptop up and if he doesn't have a space for the table, he has to balance it with one hand or type it with another. And if he's in a cafeteria, sometimes he has to balance a tray of food on his feet. So having a tray that could carry these items for him while he has to move would be very ideal.
And as for the magnitude of this problem, many wheelchair users actually express the need and desire for a lap tray. And so with over 3.6 million wheelchair users within the U.S., according to the U.S. Census Bureau's report in 2010, we saw this as a growing problem. And this problem is also multifaceted, in which the effects of cost as well as the structure of both the wheelchair and the tray will really affect the type of tray that is on the market and that is wanted to be acquired by Tony.
So first thing we did was we wanted to kind of have an interview with Tony, see how he interacted with his chair before we kind of got into brainstorming and prototyping. So we first wanted to meet with Tony, and we wanted to see how he interacted with his chair, and kind of as Andrea touched on, how he dealt with the problem today. We wanted to get specific measurements to see how we could customize this tray specifically for his chair, and we also wanted to really narrow down what his top design criteria were. And then after that, we met with the wise Dave to kind of get a better sense of how to tackle our project and to see what would be the best way of moving forward.
So a little bit more about what criteria we decided on. So we broke it down into stuff that we really thought was important for his tray to have and stuff that we thought would be nice additives. Obviously something that supports and is stable was definitely a need to have, inexpensive, so it could be accessible perhaps for other people as well later on. And obviously the coolness factor we've been talking about, having a really good design, those were all needs to have. And nice to have would have been more degrees of freedom and being able to detach, so if he needs to take it off for one day, that would be a really great thing to have.
And then one of our starting stages was actually analyzing the existing solutions that are on the market. There are many, but there are also limitations that these ones pose for different wheelchair users. The first limitation and restriction is the use of armrests for stability and also attachment. Tony actually does not have armrests on his wheelchair, so we have disregarded those two. And then looking at the Butler, we also disregarded that one because that one requires attachment to a surface, which is not exactly aligned with Tony's preferences. He wants more so of a standalone tray that he can work with independently despite needing to attach to a surface. And then as for the Theratin support system, that one is quite bulky and has a lot of different parts. And again, Tony wants something that's more simplified and that's easy to attach and detach from his wheelchair. So the last remaining two that are on this slide, we really drew inspiration from these ones because of their structure and that non-slip flat activity pad, as well as the slim pole that you see in the bottom right.
So the next thing we wanted to do is brainstorm lots of different design concepts. We wanted to think about all the different mechanisms that we could potentially use so that we could consider all options before narrowing down to our top designs.
So these are some of the designs that at first we considered that we thought had really cool features, like the pivot table that we thought could swing back and forth and give Tony some range of motion there. However, for various reasons, we decided to go against that. And for all these other options, the arm-like tray that Marissa was kind of talking about, the in-between-the-legs pull tray, or a handlebar tray that he could swing from the back of his wheelchair, they all had really cool features, but in the end, we decided that for concerns about support, stability, or otherwise that would limit his movement in and out of his wheelchair, we decided that all of these ideas would be not the best way to go.
And then to further elaborate on the concerns that Andrea briefly mentioned, we are definitely looking at the technical feasibility of our tray that we designed. So will this tray be something that Tony can use in his workspace at home doing simple errands? We want this tray to be easily used by Tony. And then we are also considering the user acceptance of the tray. So does it have that cool factor that we've mentioned all throughout the class? And then the third consideration for top design is the safety consideration, which is huge. And so we want to make sure that not only using the tray is safe, but the items such as his laptop and the food are also stabilized on the tray as well. So with those three considerations, we arrive at our top design being the height adjustable tray. And this tray, with the tray on top and the two poles on the bottom, which are called telescoping tubes, they also have small holes right underneath the tray. And so this will actually allow for that height adjustment by using this pin mechanism. And then if you look closely at the clamps where Andrea's hand is and towards the bottom of the chair in the picture on the right, you will be able to see that the clamp will be able to clip right onto the right onto the wheelchair. But we drew this inspiration actually from the clasp, the water bottle clasp that Tony has on his wheelchair that was actually meant for a bike. And so that is our first top design option.
So our second top design option, we're thinking more about horizontal movement than a vertical movement. So we're thinking about having two supports on each side of his chair, and then having two slots on his tray that he could slide in, so he could have it close if he wanted to eat, or have it farther away if he wanted to type.
And lastly, some considerations. We want to finalize our design and then secure dimensions, and then also being able to balance Tony's preferences with what we think we can physically manufacture is going to be a challenge, but ultimately we want to create a very user-friendly tray that he's able to use wherever he goes that has that coolness factor and he can take wherever he wants to go.
Thank you.
Next we have Kitty Cat Meow.
Just wanted to look okay. Do that? Sure. Okay. So I just get this one? Yeah. Sure. Cool. Yes.
Yes. All right, so we are Team Kitty Cat Meow, aka the Hideaway Lap Tray team. So I am Lene Trick. I'm a senior in mechanical engineering and kind of focus my time on sustainable development and energy.
And I'm Tita Kanjanapas. I'm also a senior in mechanical engineering, and my interest is sort of medical robotics and assistive technologies.
I'm Ashley, another senior in mechanical engineering, and my interests lie in designing for affordability and accessibility.
Great, so here's the agenda for what we're going to be covering in our presentation today. The first thing that we want to be looking at is the outlining of the issue for our partner Nick, who we're going to be solving these issues for. Then we are going to be understanding a better idea of what Nick needs in regards to his issue. Then we're going to be looking at what existing products are out there on the market. And then we're going to say how our product is different and how it's better. And then we're going to be looking at some prototypes that we've made, and some of them we've brought around here with us. And of course, we're going to be analyzing those prototypes to see what works and what doesn't work. And we do this in order to plan our future steps to make sure we accomplish all our goals.
On the right, we can see a beautiful picture of Nick. Nick works as a clinical psychologist. He's a Stanford grad, and we're designing a lap tray for him. The main problem Nick faces is that he has trouble holding items on his lap. He writes a lot as a clinical psychologist. When he's wheeling around, sometimes things fall off his lap. His pencils sometimes fall off his lap as well, and we just want to make that easier for him. So our goal is to provide Nick with a stowable tray, something compact, non-slip, sturdy and rigid that can support the weight of common household items like his laptop, the force he applies when he writes, or groceries when he's using his wheelchair.
All right, so looking at some existing products that are out there, wheelchair trays are actually pretty common, and there's some pretty affordable options that do exist. However, they do not meet the needs that Nick has. The main problem is that they're pretty rigid and they don't really collapse at all. And the big thing Nick wanted specifically was that he could be able to remove the tray when he doesn't want to use it and put it away and hide it somewhere on the chair, so it's out of the way while he's trying to move around. And these products definitely don't work for that. Okay, so this is an example of what Nick is currently doing. He basically has a cutting board that he uses, and as he kind of keeps it flat on his lap. Obviously, this has a lot of the same issues that the previous slide had, in that you can't really put it away, you can't make it any smaller, and it's a little bit too big for what he wants.
So in going forward and designing a product for Nick, we wanted to ensure that we kept some of the good features from existing products. We wanted it to be a flat surface, we wanted it to be stable, and we wanted it to be detachable from the wheelchair. That was an important thing that he wanted. But what we're adding is this sort of a collapsibility and foldability, so you can make it smaller so that it's easy to store on the wheelchair. We want to make sure that it fits on his lap. It's also, we want it to be orientated to his needs as a clinical psychologist. He needs to be able to write on it and store his pencils. And we also want it to be large enough to suit his needs as well.
All right, so we're going to go into kind of the first big design obstacle we face, which is how the tray would actually attach to his physical chair. And so looking at the first option we thought about was having the tray have poles that would attach to the tray, and then it would attach to these two horizontal red poles that would run parallel to his legs. And so can you go to the next slide? So just looking at this, there were some issues that kind of came out of that, and the biggest one was that the side of the chair is pretty busy. There's a lot of levers, there's the brake over there, and so it wasn't favorable to add more things onto the side. So we wanted to think about how we could incorporate other parts of the chair.
This led us to our dispatchable tray idea, which took advantage of Nick's great range of motion to the space underneath his seat. The way it would work is that we would have a bar that can be pulled out from under his seat, and then it can turn to hinge to reveal a stand for the tray table. The pro of this idea was that all the weight of the tray is on the stand that is underneath his seat. It's easily accessible and sturdy. However, this is quite complicated to manufacture. We would need a tougher material to withstand this weight, and manufacturing would include tighter tolerances, as opposed to the clamp-on method, which is more technically straightforward, but the major con of that was that all the weight of the tray would be resting on Nick's lap.
Then we're going to look at the second requirement, which is this foldable, collapsible mechanism. So these are some of our CAD designs of what we thought was perhaps the simplest idea of how to solve the situation of making something smaller, which is just to add a hinge. And we created this prototype over here, which is made out of pink foam. We added a hinge to it. As you can see, it collapses super easily, and it also bears weight on one side. So when it's there, you can put weight on it and it'll stay. And we also brought this design to Nick because it was important to see whether it met his design specifications in person. So this is a to-scale prototype, and that's a picture of Nick using it. What we discovered as a challenge when we brought this to Nick is that even when it collapses to its collapsed state, it's still too big to fit on his wheelchair. So that made us come up with even more prototypes, and our second iteration, we thought of this roll-up tray. As you can see over here, it is a roll-up tray that collapses and you can roll it up. It's really easy to use even with just one hand, and it rolls up real small into this compact shape, and it also bears weight on one side. So I push on that side and it's able to bear weight. And so these are some images of what it looks like closer up. We're currently using tape to provide that sort of flexibility, but also connectivity. But we're looking into some hinges. And some challenges are how to make sure that we have like correct hinges that will support this weight.
We also played with the idea of having a scissoring base and then a separate tray that goes on top of it. The scissoring base can extend or retract. The problem with this is that it's not the most comfortable, and there's a lot more moving pieces that could lead to errors in manufacturing. But the beauty of this is that a separate tray piece can allow for different types of trays, maybe ones with divots for a pencil or a cup.
Right, and so thinking about what we've done a lot of talking with Nick and brainstorming ideas. We wanted to think about what we need to do kind of to move the project forward. And so we're kind of at this stage right now where we're taking our ideas and thinking, how can we choose materials that work well with the design and work well with the cool factor? And how can we choose things that will be cheaper than what is actually existing on the market right now? And so just taking these designs and looking at how to improve them and how to test them with the weight requirements that Nick imposed on with his knees. And so just specific steps that we're thinking about are scale models, making sure it fits under the wheelchair, which is a problem we ran into, looking at the different kinds of hinges and materials that would work with the roll-up, as well as locking that in place so it holds weight, and thinking about how to store it on the chair, as well as testing the actual manufacturing of the final product.
Great, thank you so much for listening.
Big three. Big three. For this all day.
You want quicker than that? Yeah. We'll just pass it on. Awesome. No, sure. I'm not. Good. Hey, we're gonna have a video too, just so you know. All right, cool.
All right, great. We are the Big Three. I'm Brian.
My name is Jack. And I'm Austin.
And we worked on the Pickup project. So a little bit about our story. A couple weeks ago, everybody was presenting their certain needs of what they needed to get fixed, what they needed to potentially improve on in their lives. And one person who really stuck out to us was Danny. So we decided to work out with Danny in Stanford. One of Danny's main problems is that he loves his phone, but he always drops it. It's always on the ground. He has cerebral palsy and vision issues, which cause him to sometimes misplace his phone. So we spent a lot of time with Danny. We wanted to figure out what his certain problems was, what was limiting in his factors of using his phone, and what was causing the drops. And he decided that the biggest thing for him was that he had trouble holding on to it and things like that. And we kind of worked with Cam and their group with a cup holder and things like that to find a place to put it. But in terms of picking it up, once he dropped it, it would sometimes take Stanford 20 to 30 minutes to come back into his room, figure out where it was, pick it back up and get into him. And through the time that we spent with Danny, we realized that he's actually a very important person. He's worked with Google, Apple, he's on the boards of certain companies. So his phone's a big factor in his life in terms of communication. And even around his house, he has a lot of kind of push-to-talk, Alexa type things that he runs to his phone. So that's kind of why we fell in love with Danny and wanted to work with him to help him fix his problem. So, like I mentioned, we walked around his house and we said, he needs a stick. And we're like, Danny, show us what you're currently using. That's cool. Show us what you're currently using to pick up your phone. And it's not good enough. You guys will see here. Thank you. So, is there a way to get back to the... So as you can see, that stick is just simply not good enough. With his limited use of dexterity in his hands, it's very hard to sit there and very time consuming to sit there and try to jab at his phone with a stick. So we came up with a solution after talking with him that he needs a stick that can be collapsible so we can keep it on him, as well as magnetic to allow the process of picking things up to be much easier and much more efficient.
So this is our current prototype as it stands. Kind of what Brian briefly mentioned, one of the biggest issues we were thinking about is transportability. Can he keep it on himself at all times? Obviously, if he's dropping things like his phone that he has on his person, it makes sense to want to have this device on him at all times as well. So we played around with the idea of a lot of different materials that we would use for the actual stick part of the device, looking at uncollapsible as well as collapsible different materials with factoring in the weight, etc. What we settled on is that what you see here is basically an umbrella that's been completely disassembled to its bare bones, and using that collapsible mechanism and the ability with the push of a button for it to extend, so eliminating the need for him to pull it out himself. And so that's been the main focus of our prototyping phase thus far. You look at the existing solutions in the market, this is similar to what Danny uses right now. It's clearly not good enough. You have the grip mechanism that's difficult for him to operate. The actual head of the device isn't really suited for the phone itself and other larger objects that you would need to pick up. Kind of looking at similar objects to what we're thinking, incorporating magnets into picking up. You have this heavy-duty magnetic pickup tool. Obviously, it's not collapsible. And this, in addition to the next device I'll show you, they're more geared towards workshop applications, where they're picking up screws, metal shavings, things that are already magnetic and that are small in weight and are not targeted for device pickup. So similarly, you look at a collapsible model, it doesn't have the amount of force required to pick up objects, and again, it's targeted towards like metal shavings and small things. So what we're thinking about next.
Yeah, so kind of looking at some of our designs, some of the things that we were trying to decide is trying to find a type of adhesive or some type of magnet that could be put on the back of Danny's phone. So as you can kind of see in this picture to the right, this is actually a magnet on the back of Brian's phone that he has. And while it's good for mounting his phone like in his car while he's trying to use directions and stuff, it's really not as stable as as it needs to be if you were to try and pick something up. So that's where we put in these on the top left, those other magnets. We've been trying to kind of play around and find different magnets, and I guess our biggest problem has been trying to find the right adhesive while using this collapsible stick and making it so we can find a magnet that fits on the end of the collapsible stick while it can work with Danny to be able to pick up the phone. So I guess going forward with some of our next steps is trying to make it so we can create this collapsible stick and make it easier for Danny, because the biggest thing for him is that he wants to be able to do things like this independently rather than having to depend on Stanford to come in. If he does something simple like drop his phone, it'll make his life a lot easier if he's able to kind of do this individually rather than rely on somebody else. So I guess just taking our next steps forward is continuing to test out these different products that we've already kind of tested with different magnets and seeing what exactly can work for Danny.
And yeah, I mean, looking at the technical standpoint, we're factoring in weight, cost, accessibility of magnets and adhesives. Our end goal is really to give Danny a handful of one-sided adhesives with small magnets on them that can be placed on objects that he carries on his person at all times. So it's out of the way, it's not going to be cumbersome or difficult to deal with, and if something that falls off his chair that he handles on a day-to-day basis, then he's able to pick it back up with ease. And factoring in the heavy-duty magnet on the end of the stick, factoring weight and cost as well. And so those are our next steps moving forward. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Prodola.
right, sweet. Hey guys, we are Team Travola and we're working on Danny's lap tray. You've heard a bit about Danny already, so I'll just skip that and just go straight into our table of contents of what we're going to be covering. We'll just intro the team really quick, go into what the problem -- what the needs are for this lap tray, existing solutions versus our solution, walk through our sketches, lo-fi and medium-fi prototypes, and then talk about what's left to work on. So I'm Arkira, and I'm studying symbolic systems and music technology. I'm a junior here.
My name is Tony. I am a senior here, and I'm studying mechanical engineering.
And I'm Jenny, and I'm studying STS. So right to the problem and need. So we wanted to create a lap tray that doesn't take up more space than it currently does in the current wheelchair, and then an attachment that does not require any like drilling holes or adding any more onto the current wheelchair, and then finally it's simple and intuitive.
When we came down to think about it, it was actually more complicated. The wheelchair had very limited space for us to attach, and we also did not want to make the wheelchair bulkier than it actually was. Danny's hallway and bedroom in his house is also very cramped as well, so we did not want anything extending outside of the wheelchair in case it ran into walls. It had to support the weight of his laptop. And one of the biggest design problems is that Danny has low dexterity with his hand and is very low grip, also vision impairment as well. So with that in mind, we wanted to create a design that was simple motion, did not require locks or latches or too many steps. This is a space claim of the wheelchair that we're working with. That square or that rectangle that you see there is only the size of an 8x11 piece of paper, and then we only have around like 2 inches in between to work with. We didn't want to work underneath the chair or behind the chair because it would be hard for Danny to reach.
So here are some existing solutions in the market. So the prices range from all the way from $12 to $400, and the ones you see here are about $200. So while these may be solutions for existing users out there, most importantly, it wasn't created just for Danny. It's not customized for him. And moving on to our solution.
So this is our solution right here. It is something that requires only one motion and very easy for Danny to use. There will be no latches, no locking mechanisms. Right here you can see to stow it and deploy it, Danny only has to pull it up and it will support itself and support the weight. Also very minimal. Here we should have a video. So that's the CAD model demonstrating how easy it is to deploy.
We also have it here, so I'll show you that in a second.
No, that's fine.
Nah, don't worry about it.
And the concept should basically fit right there, right in front, right next to where Danny can reach. Danny's wheelchair also does not have armrest as well, so there's no attachment point to use existing table solutions.
So basically the factors that we had going into this were that it had to be simple, so we didn't want any buttons or levers or anything like that because they're kind of hard to use. We also wanted it to be practical, as in like it was just very simple to use and it didn't add any space, like it didn't take it up any more room in front or on the sides of the wheelchair because he can kind of barely maneuver through the house anyway. We also wanted it to be unobtrusive, like his hands and his feet can't be hitting all over it. And detachable, we just, we want it to be an attachment. We don't want it to be a permanent part of the wheelchair.
So our prototypes is showing some of the sketches that we had. So we got a lot of inspiration from like desks around different classrooms like Hewlett, and also some trays in airplanes. And also we experimented with like different functional things like hinges, and as well as motion of swiveling and sliding.
So this is our lo-fi. This cardboard has seen a lot, but basically that's what it looks like. The idea is more clear in the medium-fi, which is right here, and I'll just show it to you. Oh, yeah, we can watch the video right now. Just keep going for it. Oh wait, you want to mute it? No, it's fine. So that's what it takes to deploy it. And then to just store it again.
So to deploy it,
Here. It's upside down.
oh yeah, it's upside down. So to deploy it, all Danny has to do, if he was sitting down, pull it up, and it falls over on the side.
Can you see it?
Yeah, falls over on the side. This part right here comes out to support the table, and when he folds it up, it falls into the table as well.
Right. So from the side, the way it's working is like when you pull it up, it'll just lock. You just kind of hit it downwards. Go. And it rests on this bar right here, so it'll just support its own weight. And when you're done, you just bat it upwards, and it slides straight down. That's the idea.
So future work.
Yep.
Yeah, so we kind of have an idea going forward about what mechanisms we want to use for the table, but obviously we can't just mount this piece of foam core onto this chair. So our next step would be to laser print something more durable out of Duron, acrylic, etc. Buy some cheap hardware from McMaster or Home Depot, and then attach a physical prototype onto his wheelchair to see if he likes it or not. After that, this is still not customized for Danny, so we will be adding all the customizations that he wanted. A cup holder, we could cut a hole into the table. We could add borders so that his pencils, his phone would not slip off. Add more storage onto the table as well. And then for the final prototype, we hope to use better materials, make it look nice. So instead of just a bar on the exterior, we could add accents, cover it up, make it look nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. This is Team Buckle Up.
All right. Hi, everyone. We're Team Buckle Up. My name is Winston.
I'm Chloe. And I'm Excel.
And we work with Abby and her service dog, Nathan, in order to improve buckles for service dog harnesses. So that's us right there. And we were kind of wondering what is the issue exactly with these buckles, because they're so normal. We see them everywhere. So in order to figure out what the issue was, we actually went over to Abby's house and learned about her experience with these. And we learned about how critical this harness is in her daily life, because Nathan helps her walk and pick up objects, so it's very critical to her daily life. And we see there are two buckles on the front of Nathan's harness, and there's one underneath his belly. And the issue that we found was that they were designed for people with full functioning and complete dexterity. And specifically in Abby's case is that she has arthritis, and making this motion to squeeze to release the buckles is painful and difficult for her. And talking about how big this problem is, I mean, you know how ubiquitous these kinds of buckles are. And in fact, there are more than 15 million people in the US with some form of arthritis. So it's quite widespread, this issue of joint pain. So we looked at what solutions out there might exist for this. There are magnetic jewelry clasps, but they're too weak for our application. They're magnetic dog leashes, but the clasp there was too bulky for Nathan's harness. There is a Velcro dog harness, but we'll talk about the drawbacks with Velcro later on in the presentation. And there's this buckle tool that helps you open different kinds of buckles, but unfortunately not the type of buckle that exists on Nathan's harness.
So as much as all of these existing solutions had drawbacks that just made them unfeasible as a solution for Abby, they did inspire us. We were particularly inspired by the idea of using magnets or the idea of creating a mechanism that took the load away from the fingers and towards another part of the hand in order to open or close buckles. And that inspired us to make lots of drawings, lots of design options. And out of all these design options, well, we really had to start down selecting. We used a design criteria table. Of course, we had to think about functionality, but it was also very critical that we think about safety, both Nathan and Abby's, and also about the comfort of both Nathan and Abby when interacting with these buckles. We also did want to think about the coolness factor and if they would look out of place on Nathan's black fur or on the harness. And we decided to also think about affordability and just simplicity of design, making sure that we would be able to create this design in the time frame that we had. So from there, we down selected to about half of our original ideas. And in order to continue the down selection process, we turned towards prototypes. We did 3D print a prototype, and then the rest of the prototypes, we actually ordered a lot of cheap parts from the internet that were either exactly the same or simulation of the mechanisms we wanted to integrate in our final solution. These prototypes allowed us to play with these mechanisms and also allowed us to have Abby interact with these mechanisms.
And so the next step was to have all those meetings with Abby and to test out those ideas. And so in one of those meetings, we got to meet not only with Abby and Nathan, but also with Erin, who's Nathan's dog trainer. And we got a lot of really useful insights and feedback into what we needed to take into consideration. I think one good example is we came into that meeting thinking Velcro could be a great solution for Abby and kind of wondering why she hadn't tried that yet. But we left understanding much better that Velcro wasn't durable, could get stuck in Nathan's fur, could get dirt and become less durable over time, and also just wasn't as reliable because it didn't have that haptic feedback that buckles give. We also learned about other issues to consider, like the risk of ingestion when you're working with animals who might chew on buckles, as well as other things. Like if Abby had to grab onto the harness in case of emergency, we wanted a buckle that wasn't just going to open if she accidentally grabbed onto that. And also in those meetings, we got to try them onto Nathan. So we installed some of our buckle ideas and prototypes onto a strap and got to see what it felt like when we put them on the dog and had that experience. So the next step was to come back with all of these new insights that we gained and narrow down our choices, and we did this through revisiting our criteria. So this is kind of an abridged version of our table and what we changed and had to revisit based on what we learned. And then we narrowed that down to 3 solutions, so the Fidlock buckle, the pull to release, and the Cobra. So onto our first candidate solution, that's the Fidlock slide buckle, which is right here. It costs approximately $4, and it works basically with auto-aligning magnets to close it and applying sideways pressure to open it. In terms of the benefits or the great aspects to it, it's obviously a stock part, so it's accessible. It auto-aligns, which makes it easy. You just have to get the 2 parts close enough and they perfectly close together. And you've got that great haptic feedback of the clicking noise where you know it's in place. But the drawbacks include that it takes a lot of dexterity to open. It's actually not very intuitive, and it was quite hard to identify where the pressure needed to be applied in order to open it. And then there's obviously the magnet safety concerns and the fact that it's hard plastic.
Right, and our next candidate is the Fidlock V buckle. It works like this. You pull vertically up on the tab to open it, and it closes automatically like that. So the same advantages of the previous buckle, but could you go next? Perfect. Again, it easily aligns because of all the magnets, but it is hard to cover because it has a lot of moving parts, so we need that in order to protect Nathan's fur from rubbing against this plastic buckle. And of course, the magnet is also a pertinent safety concern in this candidate.
So our last option, there we go, is a Cobra buckle. The Cobra buckle is inspired by a military buckle made for military belts to hold weapons, and they're quite hard to get your hands on, but the great thing about them is that they're very easy to 3D print, which makes them very cheap to manufacture and repeatable to manufacture. This is a 3D printed prototype with loose tolerances and not the best materials, but actually we can 3D print it right here at Stanford with better quality materials and better tolerances. It's very easy because unlike a traditional buckle, you don't have to put pressure on the tabs, you just have to slide them to the side and it will open immediately, and you just have to broadly click it into place. So same thing, it's easy, but it also has no magnets. It can be made entirely out of plastic that will be comfortable and safe for Nathan. The last thing is, in order to use it, we are going to have to change the size of it. So where we are now is just continuing to adjust and better these solutions and figuring out how to add them to the existing strap setup that Nathan has. Thank you.
Great. Okay, last team is elevator pitch.
Hi, we're Team Elevator Pitch, aptly named because we're working on an elevator button pusher for Angie, who is currently a sophomore at Stanford. Let me try to, yeah. So basically, Angie has a very limited range of motion and strength, upper body strength, because she has a muscular dystrophy condition. And as a result, we need to find an elevator button pusher that will enable her to operate an elevator by herself. That has to be light and potentially collapsible, and we'll also have to attach to her wheelchair, and it has to be somewhere where she can independently reach out to by herself. So we looked at some existing solutions, and there were a number of options that we were considering, all of which are presented on the slide here. And of the three options that we considered, we did a weighted scoring selection matrix, basically focusing on the functionality and the ease of use being the most important, and decided that the telescopic rod was the most feasible solution. And because the elevator button pusher by nature has to come in a certain design format with a rod, end effector, and a grip, we didn't really spend too much time sketching those out, but dove into the rapid prototyping process right away.
Alright, so for our first prototype, we went with a basic telescoping antenna. And we tried this out ourselves in the Lathrop elevators. And our first attempt, we just used the telescoping rod to extend it and then tried to push the buttons. And we found it was very difficult to aim at the button and also to produce the force to push the button without the rod collapsing on us. So we added a putty tip, and with this bigger tip we were able to more easily aim, and we were also able to push the buttons without the rod collapsing. And we were successfully able to push buttons inside and outside of the elevator. So when we tried this prototype out with Angie, she loved the size and she loved the weight of this rod. But it was clear that there were some design changes that we were going to have to make. The first is that she wasn't able to raise the rod to do a pushing motion, so she had to result in a whacking application. And this meant that she would use her knees to control the rod and whack with one hand while her other hand was resting on the joystick for her wheelchair. So we had to consider how can we make a gripping element that will be used for her knees for control with one hand and with both of her knees. Another thing we noticed when working with her is that she wasn't able to open and close the telescoping rod, so she wanted a rod that was going to be fixed at its length. So that brought up questions of where are we going to store this on her wheelchair. And finally, it was clear that with the whacking application, instead of a front-on pushing, we needed a much harder end effector, so it'd be tough enough to press the buttons on the elevators. And when we tested this with her at Treziter, we were able to successfully press some of the buttons, and she was able to do that by herself, which was pretty neat.
So yeah, so getting the feedback from Angie, we did our second round of prototyping, and so this time we tried to look at some of the feedback that she got and some of the design challenges we had noticed when she was trying to use our initial prototype. And so we got different types of rods. So first, using different lengths and different materials to see what weights and what lengths might be better for her, because the original rod was only 25 inches and was maybe on the shorter side, but it was still a good length for her. We also tried different types of handles, so different shapes, different types of foam to see whether certain stiffness or softness would make it easier for her to control. And then also different types of end effectors, from sort of like a triangle sort of shape for better pressure, such as like in a reflex hammer, or like a rounded tip just in case that would be easier to hit. And so having all these different permutations, we brought these to Angie and got more feedback from her. And this was actually really informative. So the first major thing we learned is that none of the new rods that we got were light enough for Angie. So we actually ended up going back to the collapsible rod, but now we're gonna have to look into trying to fix it to the right length. However, the handle options went a little better, so we were able to narrow down the type of, so first of all, the type of material she liked using, the type of shape of the handle that would work really well for the rod. And then we also were able to identify the end effector, but obviously there's improvements. So one of the issues with the round effector, which she liked the most in terms of being able to whack things, is that it was actually too light to effectively hit anything because it was only 3D printed. And so our next solution could be to add more weight to that. And so one issue with all of these different permutations is that we still haven't really addressed the storage issue. And so it's nice that we know that now that we have a set length for our rod, that will help a little, but we won't really know how to fix storage issues until we have the handle and the effector more finalized.
So these are some of the remaining challenges specifically and what our next steps would be. So basically the fixating the rod length, as Jessica previously spoke about, would be a concern. But since the rod is made out of aluminum and we found that it's kind of hard to weld that material, I think we'll need some professional assistance from the PRL to address that. And basically also the other parts, the end effector and the handle being the other concerns of the actual equipment.
And then next, again, we're refining the handle. So we've got the size and the shape down. We're now talking to the PRL and we're looking into maybe a better material such as silicone to make a permanent fixation to the rod.
And for our end effector, we're just looking at a harder surface. And overall, at this point, we know our main three pieces: our end effector, the rod, and the base that we're working with. And we're making progress with Angie, which is exciting. So thank you, everyone, for your attention.
Well, I want to thank all the teams for their awesome presentations. You all did a fantastic job.